You know what hurts the most? It's not the words themselves, though "old fool" still echoes in my mind like a broken record. It's the way my own granddaughter looked at me when she said it, like I was nothing more than an embarrassing relic cluttering up her perfect life. I'm Eloisa Washington, 68 years old, and I've spent 4 decades building something beautiful in this corner of Atlanta. But apparently, that means nothing to the people I love most. My restaurant, Eloisa's Soul Kitchen, sits on Auburn Avenue like a warm hug in brick and mortar. The smell of cornbread and collard greens drifts from my kitchen every morning, mixing with the Georgia humidity and the sounds of my neighborhood waking up. I inherited my grandmother's recipes, the same woman who taught me that food is love made visible, that every meal is a chance to nourish not just bodies, but souls. For 30 years, I've served this community. Through recessions and gentrification, through the loss of my beloved husband Marcus 4 years ago, through every storm that tried to shake my foundation, my customers aren't just customers, they're family. Mrs. Johnson brings me her grandchildren every Sunday after church. Young Malik stops by for advice with his homework and a plate of my famous mac and cheese. The elderly folks from the senior center know they can count on me for a hot meal and a listening ear. But none of that seemed to matter yesterday morning when my daughter Patricia and granddaughter Brittany walked into my house for Thanksgiving dinner. I'd spent 3 days preparing: turkey seasoned with my secret blend of spices, sweet potato pie that could make angels weep, dressing that carries 5 generations of Washington family love. I set my grandmother's china on the mahogany table Marcus and I bought for our first apartment, lit candles that cast golden light across the dining room where we'd celebrated every holiday for 30 years. I should have seen it coming. Brittany's been different since she moved to New York for that finance job, speaking differently, dressing differently, looking at her roots like there's something to be ashamed of. But I never imagined she'd look me in the eye, in my own home, on the day meant for gratitude, and reduce everything I am to 2 cruel words. The worst part? Patricia just sat there saying nothing, as if her daughter's disrespect was perfectly acceptable. As if the woman who raised her, who sacrificed everything to give her opportunities, deserved to be dismissed like yesterday's newspaper. Now I'm sitting in my kitchen at midnight, surrounded by leftover food that tastes like heartbreak, wondering how love can turn so cold. But something's stirring in my chest, not just hurt, but something fiercer, something that whispers this story isn't over yet. The morning started with such hope. I woke up at 5 a.m., same as always, and put on my best dress. The burgundy one Marcus always said brought out the fire in my eyes. I wanted everything perfect for my girls. I wanted them to remember why family matters, why traditions bind us together across generations. Brittany arrived in her rental car, a sleek silver thing that looked out of place in my driveway. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than most folks in my neighborhood make in a month. Her hair straightened to perfection, her nails done in some fancy salon. She barely hugged me, like my love might wrinkle her outfit. "Grandma, this place looks so dated," she said, scanning my living room with those critical eyes. The same living room where she used to build pillow forts and beg me for bedtime stories. Patricia tried to smooth things over, but I could see the embarrassment in her face too. My own daughter, ashamed of the home that sheltered her, the woman who worked double shifts to pay for her college education. At dinner, I served my heart on those plates. Every dish told our story. The cornbread recipe from my great-grandmother who survived slavery, the collard greens seasoned with wisdom, passed down through generations of strong Black women. I talked about the restaurant's success, about the community center I'm planning to fund, about the scholarship program for local kids. That's when Brittany rolled her eyes and said it. "Grandma, you're being such an old fool. Nobody cares about this outdated stuff anymore. You need to sell that restaurant and move somewhere more appropriate for someone your age." The silence that followed felt like death itself. The candles flickered, casting shadows across faces I thought I knew. Patricia looked down at her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. Brittany just sat there, satisfied with her cruelty, like she'd finally said what needed saying. I felt something break inside my chest, not just my heart, but my faith in the people I'd loved unconditionally. The room suddenly felt cold despite the warmth from my oven. The smell of my carefully prepared meal turned bitter in my nostrils. "I see," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I see exactly how you feel about your old fool grandmother. I stood up slowly, my arthritis forgotten in the face of this deeper pain. Dinner's over. They left within minutes, Patricia mumbling apologies that meant nothing, Brittany checking her phone like my heartbreak was boring her. I watched their taillights disappear into the Atlanta night and knew something had changed forever. Now, sitting here in my kitchen, where 4 generations of Washington women learned to cook with love, I'm making a decision that would shock them both. They want to treat me like a foolish old woman? Fine. But this foolish old woman controls a $3 million empire, and it's time they learned what respect really costs. What would you do if your own family called you worthless? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next in my story. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay in the bed I shared with Marcus for 35 years, staring at the ceiling and feeling the weight of betrayal settle into my bones. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, hurt transformed into something else: determination. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and driving through the quiet streets of Atlanta to my lawyer's office. Elias Thompson has been handling my affairs since Marcus passed, and he's one of the few people who truly understands what I've built. His office sits in a restored Victorian house in the historic district, surrounded by magnolia trees that remind me why I love this city. "Eloisa," he said, looking up from his coffee with concern. "What brings you here so early?" I sat down in the leather chair across from his desk and spoke the words that would change everything. "I want to revise my will, completely." For the next 2 hours, we went through every detail: the restaurant, the property, the investments Marcus and I had carefully built over decades of hard work, all of it getting redirected. Brittany's name disappeared from document after document, replaced with organizations that actually value what I represent. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People would receive a substantial donation. The Atlanta Senior Center would get funding for a new wing. The scholarship fund I'd been planning would become reality, helping young Black entrepreneurs start their own businesses. Most importantly, I established the Washington Foundation for Elder Care, specifically focused on supporting elderly African Americans who'd been abandoned by their families. "Are you sure about this?" Elias asked, his pen hovering over the final signature line. I thought about Brittany's dismissive voice, about Patricia's silence, about all the elderly folks I serve at my restaurant who've been cast aside by children who forgot where they came from. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The paperwork took 3 hours. When I walked out of that office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I was being vindictive, but because I was finally putting my money where my values were. Back at the restaurant, I threw myself into work with renewed energy. The lunch crowd noticed immediately. My smile was brighter, my hugs warmer, my food somehow tasted even better. Mrs. Johnson commented that I seemed different, like you found something you lost. She wasn't wrong. I'd found my power again. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my staff. "We're expanding," I announced to their surprised faces. "I want to start a weekly program, free meals for seniors every Wednesday, cooking classes for teenagers every Saturday, and a monthly community dinner where 3 generations can share stories and recipes." My head chef, Jerome, grinned wide. "Miss Eloisa, that sounds like heaven on earth." "It's going to be more than that," I said, feeling Marcus's spirit beside me. "It's going to be a revolution, a quiet one, but a revolution nonetheless." As the sun set over Auburn Avenue, painting my restaurant in golden light, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Marcus died: complete peace with my decisions. Brittany and Patricia had shown me exactly who they were. Now it was time to show them exactly who I am. The phone rang that evening. Patricia's name flashed on the screen, probably calling to smooth things over with empty apologies. I let it go to voicemail. Some conversations can wait until people are ready to have them properly. Tonight, I'm planning menus for my new programs and dreaming of all the young faces that will learn to cook with love instead of obligation. Tomorrow, the real work begins. 3 weeks have passed since Thanksgiving, and my restaurant has transformed into something magical. The Wednesday senior meals started with 12 people, and now we're serving 47 every week. Watching elderly folks who've been forgotten by their families find community around my tables fills a hole in my heart I didn't even know existed. This morning, the November air carries the scent of wood smoke and possibility as I unlock the restaurant doors. Atlanta's waking up slowly, the way it always does, with the distant sound of traffic on I-75 mixing with birds singing in the oak trees that line Auburn Avenue. My neighborhood is changing, gentrification creeping in like kudzu. But my restaurant remains a constant, a place where history and hope intersect. Jerome arrives early as always, carrying fresh collard greens from the farmer's market. Miss Eloisa, you see the line forming already? He nods toward the window where several teenagers wait for our Saturday cooking class. Among them is Destiny, a 16-year-old whose grandmother brings her every week. Last Saturday, she learned to make cornbread from scratch, and the pride in her eyes when she pulled that golden pan from the oven reminded me why this work matters. These young people are hungry for connection to their roots, even if they don't always know how to ask for it. Today, we're teaching them my grandmother's sweet potato pie recipe, I tell Jerome, tying my apron around my waist. The same apron I've worn for 15 years, stained with love and seasoned with memories. The morning flies by in a blur of flour-dusted hands and laughter. Destiny's pie comes out perfect, and she immediately calls her mother to share the news. Mama, I made Grandmama's pie. Miss Eloisa taught me the secret ingredient. The secret ingredient isn't nutmeg or vanilla. It's patience. It's taking time to do things right, to honor the people who came before us, to understand that cooking is an act of love that transcends generations. After the teenagers leave, clutching their pie boxes like treasures, I sit down with my coffee and the mail. Bills, mostly, and advertisements for restaurant equipment I don't need. But at the bottom of the stack is a letter that makes my hands shake. It's from Brittany. I don't open it immediately. Instead, I walk to the window and watch the Saturday afternoon life of my neighborhood unfold. Mrs. Patterson walks her ancient poodle past the mural depicting civil rights leaders. Young fathers push strollers while talking on phones. Teenagers gather at the corner store, their laughter mixing with the sound of gospel music drifting from the church next door. This is my world. This is what I've built and what I'm fighting to preserve. Finally, I open the letter. Brittany's handwriting is as perfect as everything else about her. Each letter formed with the precision she brings to her financial analyses. Dear Grandma, it begins, and I can almost hear the reluctance in those words. I've been thinking about Thanksgiving, and I wanted to apologize for my words. I know you work hard at the restaurant, and I shouldn't have called it outdated. I hope we can move past this and get back to normal. I read it twice, then fold it carefully and put it in my apron pocket. It's not really an apology. It's a negotiation, a careful attempt to smooth things over without actually acknowledging the depth of her disrespect. She's sorry for her words, not for the attitude behind them. She wants to get back to normal, not to build something better. But normal is what got us here in the first place. Normal is a granddaughter who sees her heritage as embarrassing, a daughter who stays silent when respect dies at the dinner table, a family that takes love for granted until it's too late. I won't be responding to this letter. Not yet. Not until Brittany understands that some bridges, once burned, require more than pretty words to rebuild. The afternoon crowd starts filtering in. Regulars who know my Saturday special is always worth the wait. I tie my apron tighter and head back to my kitchen, where the real conversations happen, where love is measured in portions and seasoned with wisdom. Tomorrow is Sunday, and Mrs. Johnson will bring her grandchildren for their weekly meal. They'll sit at table 6, the same table where Brittany used to color while I cooked, back when she still believed her grandmother hung the moon. Some things change, some things endure, and some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight breaks your heart. What would you do if you received a half-hearted apology from someone who hurt you deeply? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see what I decide to do with Brittany's letter. December in Atlanta brings a chill that seeps into old bones, but my restaurant stays warm with the constant flow of community and comfort food. It's been 6 weeks since Thanksgiving, and the rhythm of my new programs has become as natural as breathing. Wednesday seniors, Saturday cooking classes, monthly community dinners, each event building something beautiful from the ashes of family disappointment. This morning, I'm preparing for our biggest community dinner yet when Jerome bursts through the kitchen doors, his face a mixture of excitement and concern. Miss Eloisa, you need to see this. He hands me his phone, showing a news article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Local restaurant owner creates haven for forgotten seniors. The article features a photo of me serving plates at last week's senior dinner. surrounded by smiling faces of elderly folks who found family in my dining room. The reporter interviewed several regulars, including Mr. Washington, no relation despite the name, who called my restaurant the place where dignity lives. This is wonderful, I say. But Jerome's expression tells me there's more. Keep reading, he says quietly. Halfway through the article, I find it. Washington's community outreach comes at a personal cost. Sources close to the family reveal that her own granddaughter, a successful financial analyst in New York, rarely visits and has publicly criticized the restaurant as outdated. My hands tremble slightly as I finish reading. Someone talked to the press about my family business. Someone who knew about Thanksgiving dinner and Brittany's cruel words. Before I can process this fully, my phone rings. Patricia's name flashes on the screen, and this time I answer. Mama, have you seen the newspaper? Her voice is tight with panic. I'm looking at it now. Brittany's furious. She says this makes her look terrible at work. She's talking about suing the paper for defamation. I set down the phone and take a deep breath. Through my kitchen window, I can see the lunch crowd gathering. People who come here not for publicity, but for the simple pleasure of a good meal and genuine community. Patricia, I say finally, I didn't talk to any reporter about Thanksgiving, but I won't apologize for the work I'm doing here. But Mama, this affects all of us. Brittany's career will survive a newspaper article. What won't survive is a family that's forgotten how to respect each other. The silence stretches between us like the miles that separate Atlanta from Patricia's home in Savannah. Finally, she sighs. She's coming down this weekend. She wants to talk to you. After hanging up, I stand in my kitchen surrounded by the tools of my trade. Cast iron skillets seasoned with decades of use, wooden spoons worn smooth by countless meals, recipe cards written in my grandmother's careful handwriting. This is my legacy, built one meal at a time, one act of love at a time. That evening, as I'm closing up, Destiny appears at my door. She's grown taller in the weeks since our cooking classes started, and there's a confidence in her posture that wasn't there before. Miss Eloisa, I read about you in the paper. My whole school's talking about it. What are they saying? She grins. They're saying you're famous now, but I told them you were already famous to us. Her words warm me more than any newspaper article ever could. This is what matters, not publicity or family drama, but the quiet revolution happening one young person at a time, one elderly soul at a time, one meal at a time. Saturday arrives with an unexpected phone call. It's Brittany, her voice crisp and professional despite the early hour. Grandma, I'm driving down from New York. We need to discuss this newspaper situation and how it affects the family's reputation. You're welcome to visit, I say carefully. But if you're coming to lecture me about my life choices, you might want to reconsider. I'm coming to fix this mess before it gets worse. After she hangs up, I realize something has shifted. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I'm not dreading a confrontation with Brittany. I'm curious about it, because the woman she'll find when she arrives isn't the same grandmother she dismissed 6 weeks ago. I'm stronger now. I'm clearer about my purpose. And I'm surrounded by a community that values what I bring to the world. Let her come. Let her see what she called outdated. Let her witness the revolution she helped create with her cruelty. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and I have a feeling Brittany's education is about to begin. What would you do if your granddaughter came back to confront you after reading about your success in the newspaper? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens when Brittany walks back into my restaurant. Here are chapters 6-9 to complete. She called me an old fool at Thanksgiving, so I left her out of my $3 will. Saturday afternoon brings Brittany back into my life like a storm I've been watching gather on the horizon. She pulls up in that same rental car, but this time, I'm not the woman who spent 3 days preparing a perfect Thanksgiving dinner. This time, I'm ready. I watch her through my restaurant window as she sits in the car for a full 5 minutes, probably rehearsing whatever speech she's prepared. She's wearing another expensive outfit, a navy blazer that probably costs more than Jerome makes in a week, paired with heels that click against my sidewalk like a countdown timer. When she finally enters, the lunch crowd goes quiet. Word travels fast in this neighborhood, and everyone knows about the newspaper article. They also know about the granddaughter who called me an old fool. Grandma, she says, her voice carrying that same professional tone she used on the phone. We need to talk, privately. I wipe my hands on my apron and nod toward the back booth, where Marcus and I used to sit every Sunday after church, planning our dreams over coffee and sweet potato pie. Have a seat. I'll be right there. I take my time finishing the order I'm preparing. Mrs. Henderson's usual plate of fried chicken and mac and cheese. She's 83 and comes in every Saturday because her own grandchildren live too far away to visit. As I hand her the plate, she squeezes my hand. "You handle your business, baby girl," she whispers. "We're all proud of you." When I finally sit across from Brittany, I see something I didn't expect. Exhaustion. Dark circles under her eyes, tension in her shoulders, a brittleness that wasn't there at Thanksgiving. "That newspaper article has caused problems for me at work," she begins without preamble. "My colleagues are asking questions. My boss thinks I'm some kind of ungrateful daughter who abandons her elderly grandmother." "Are you?" I ask quietly. She blinks, clearly not expecting such a direct question. "What? Are you an ungrateful granddaughter who abandons her elderly grandmother?" The silence stretches between us like the years of distance she's created. Around us, the restaurant hums with conversation and the clink of silverware against plates. The smell of cornbread and collard greens fills the air, carrying memories of every meal we've shared, every lesson I tried to teach her about love and family and respect. "I never abandoned you," she says finally, but her voice lacks conviction. "No? When's the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When's the last time you asked about the restaurant or my health or whether I was lonely after your grandfather died?" She looks down at her manicured hands. "I've been busy building my career, and I've been busy building a legacy. The difference is, I never forgot where I came from." That's when I see it, a crack in her perfect facade. Her eyes fill with tears she's too proud to let fall. "I didn't mean to hurt you at Thanksgiving," she whispers. "I was stressed about work, and Mom was pressuring me about settling down, and you were talking about all these community programs when I thought you should be taking it easy. So you decided to call me a fool. I was trying to protect you." The words explode out of her, loud enough that several customers turn to look. She immediately lowers her voice, but the damage is done. The mask has slipped, and I can see the frightened young woman underneath all that professional polish. "Protect me from what, baby girl? From being taken advantage of? From people who just want your money? From working yourself to death in this old restaurant when you could be living comfortably somewhere safe?" I lean back in the booth, finally understanding. She wasn't just dismissing my life, she was trying to control it, the same way she controls her spreadsheets and financial reports. "Brittany," I say gently, "I don't need protection from my own life. I need respect for the choices I've made." Before she can respond, Destiny appears at our table, carrying a plate of fresh cornbread. "Miss Eloisa, I made this for you using the recipe you taught me. I wanted to thank you for—" She stops mid-sentence, realizing she's interrupted something important. "It's okay, sweetheart. Brittany, this is Destiny. She's one of my cooking students." Destiny extends her hand with the confidence I've watched her build over these past weeks. "Nice to meet you. Your grandmother is amazing. She's teaching all of us kids how to cook our heritage." Brittany shakes the girl's hand, but I can see the confusion in her eyes. This isn't the image of exploitation she'd constructed in her mind. After Destiny leaves, Brittany stares at the warm cornbread, then at the bustling restaurant around us, then at me. "I didn't know," she says quietly. "Didn't know what?" "I didn't know about the cooking classes or the senior meals or any of it. I thought you were just running a restaurant." "I am running a restaurant, but I'm also building community, preserving culture, and creating family for people whose own families have forgotten them." She's quiet for a long moment, watching Mrs. Henderson laugh with her table mates, watching Jerome high-five a teenager who just mastered his first batch of biscuits, watching the life that flows through my restaurant like blood through a heart. "The newspaper article," she says finally. "It made me sound terrible. Did it lie?" Another long silence. Then, so quietly I almost miss it, "No." That's when I reach into my apron pocket and pull out a folded document. Elias gave it to me yesterday, a copy of my new will, the one that removes her name from every page. "I want you to read this," I say, sliding it across the table. "What would you do if you discovered your grandmother had written you out of her will? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see how Brittany reacts to this life-changing revelation." I watch Brittany's face as she reads through the legal document, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that looks like panic. Her hands shake slightly as she turns each page, seeing her name disappear from what she'd probably assumed was her inheritance. $3 million, she whispers, looking up at me with wide eyes. You're giving away $3 million. I'm investing $3 million in people who value what I've built. She sets the papers down carefully, as if they might explode. Grandma, you can't be serious. This is our family's legacy. No, baby girl. This restaurant is our family's legacy. These recipes are our legacy. The values your great-great-grandmother passed down through slavery and Jim Crow and every hardship that tried to break us. That's our legacy. Money is just money. But I'm your granddaughter. Yes, you are. And at Thanksgiving dinner, you made it very clear what you think of your grandmother. The lunch crowd is thinning out, but I can feel eyes on us from across the restaurant. This conversation is probably going to be neighborhood gossip by evening, but I don't care anymore. Some truths need to be spoken in the light. I was having a bad day, Brittany says, desperation creeping into her voice. I just found out my promotion was being delayed again, and I was taking it out on everyone. I didn't mean... You meant every word. I lean forward, my voice gentle but firm. And that's okay. People show you who they are when they're under pressure. You showed me that you see me as an embarrassment, my life's work as outdated, and my choices as foolish. So I made a choice of my own. She's crying now, tears streaming down her face and ruining her perfect makeup. Please, Grandma. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell the newspaper they got it wrong. You'll what? Lie to protect an inheritance you never earned? The words hit her like a slap. She sits back in the booth, staring at me with something that might be recognition. I earned it by being your granddaughter, she says weakly. No, sweetheart. You earned my love by being my granddaughter. But respect, legacy, the fruits of a lifetime of hard work, those have to be earned through your actions, not your bloodline. Jerome appears at our table, his face carefully neutral. Miss Eloisa, there's a situation in the kitchen I need you to handle. I know there's no situation. Jerome is giving me an escape route, but I also know this conversation isn't over. Brittany, you're welcome to stay and eat. The cornbread Destiny made is still warm, and today's special is my grandmother's recipe for smothered pork chops. Maybe you'll remember the taste from when you were little and still thought your grandmother was worth listening to. I stand up, my arthritis protesting after sitting so long, but my spirit feeling lighter than it has in weeks. Where are you going? She asks, panic in her voice. To work. Same thing I've been doing for 40 years while you were busy being embarrassed by me. In the kitchen, Jerome hands me a cup of coffee and doesn't ask any questions. That's one of the things I love about him. He knows when to talk and when to just be present. Through the service window, I watch Brittany sit alone in that booth, staring at the legal papers that represent the end of her assumptions about the future. She's not eating, just sitting there with tears drying on her cheeks and her perfect composure completely shattered. After about an hour, she gets up and walks to the counter where I'm preparing tomorrow's cornbread batter. Grandma, she says, her voice hoarse from crying, what would it take for you to change your mind? I don't look up from my mixing bowl. Change my mind about what? About the will. About me. Now I do look up, meeting her red-rimmed eyes. Brittany, this isn't about punishment. This is about alignment. My money is going to people and organizations that share my values. If you want to be part of that, you need to show me that you share those values too. How? That's not for me to figure out. That's for you to decide whether you think it's worth the effort. She stands there for another few minutes, watching me work, probably trying to calculate the cost-benefit analysis of changing her entire worldview for $3 million. Finally, she picks up her purse and heads for the door. But before she leaves, she turns back. I do love you, Grandma. I know I haven't shown it well, but I do. I know you do, baby girl. The question is whether you respect me. Love without respect is just sentiment, and sentiment doesn't build legacies. After she leaves, I finish the cornbread and start prep for tomorrow's senior meal. 43 people signed up this week, the highest number yet. Each one of them will sit at my tables and be treated with dignity, regardless of whether their own families remember their worth. That evening, as I'm locking up, I find an envelope slipped under my door. Inside is a handwritten note from Brittany. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Can I come back next weekend? Not to argue about the will, but to understand what I've been missing. Maybe you could teach me to make that cornbread recipe. I fold the note carefully and put it in my apron pocket next to her earlier letter. 2 pieces of paper, Two different versions of my granddaughter. The question is, which one will show up next Saturday? Some bridges can be rebuilt, but only if both people are willing to do the work. I've done my part by showing her the cost of disrespect. Now it's her turn to show me what she's willing to pay for redemption. Saturday morning arrives gray and drizzly. The kind of Atlanta weather that makes you want to stay in bed with a cup of coffee and yesterday's newspaper. But I'm up at 5 a.m. as always, because 47 seniors are counting on me for their weekly meal, and Brittany said she'd be back to learn about cornbread. I'm not sure she'll actually show up. People say a lot of things when they're emotional, and Brittany's had a week to think about whether swallowing her pride is worth $3 million. But at 7:30, just as I'm unlocking the restaurant doors, her rental car pulls up to the curb. She gets out slowly, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire. Her hair is pulled back in a ponytail, and she's not wearing makeup. She looks younger, more like the little girl who used to help me set tables on Sunday afternoons. "Good morning, Grandma," she says quietly. "Morning, baby girl. You ready to work?" She nods, and I hand her one of my extra aprons, the blue one with Eloise's Soul Kitchen embroidered across the front. She ties it around her waist with hands that shake slightly, whether from nerves or caffeine withdrawal, I can't tell. "First lesson," I say, leading her into the kitchen. Cornbread isn't just about following a recipe. It's about understanding your ingredients, respecting the process, and putting love into every step. For the next hour, I teach her the way my grandmother taught me, hands-on, with patience and stories woven between instructions. I show her how to test the oil temperature with a drop of batter, how to know when the cornmeal is perfectly mixed, how to listen for the sizzle that means the cast iron skillet is ready. "Why cast iron?" she asks, watching me pour batter into the seasoned pan. "Because it holds heat evenly, and it gets better with age, like most things worth having." She's quiet for a moment, absorbing the lesson within the lesson. By 9 a.m., the senior meal volunteers start arriving, and I put Brittany to work serving plates. She's awkward at first, clearly uncomfortable with the physical labor and unsure how to talk to the elderly folks who've become my extended family. But I watch her face change as the morning progresses. When Mrs. Henderson tells her about her late husband's service in Korea, Brittany listens with genuine interest. When Mr. Washington, still no relation, shares photos of his great-grandchildren, she admires them with real warmth. When elderly Mrs. Patterson struggles to cut her pork chop with arthritic hands, Brittany quietly helps without being asked. "These people," she says to me during a brief break, "they're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Charity cases, I guess. People looking for handouts. And what do you see now?" She looks around the dining room, where 47 seniors are sharing meals and stories and laughter. I see people who've lived full lives, who have wisdom to share, who just want to be treated with dignity. Now you're learning. The real test comes when we start cleaning up. Brittany doesn't hesitate to bus tables, wash dishes, or mop floors. Her manicured nails get dirty, her expensive jeans get stained, and she doesn't complain once. As we're finishing up, Destiny arrives for her cooking lesson, bringing 3 friends who want to learn my sweet potato pie recipe. "Miss Brittany," Destiny says, recognizing her from last week, "are you learning to cook too?" "I'm trying to," Brittany says, and I hear something new in her voice, humility. I watch my granddaughter work alongside these teenagers, measuring ingredients and mixing batter with the same careful attention I've been teaching for months. She asks questions, listens to their stories about school and family and dreams, and slowly begins to understand what I've been building here. When the pies come out of the oven, golden and perfect, Destiny hugs Brittany like they're old friends. "You did good," she says. "Miss Eloisa must be proud." After the teenagers leave, Brittany and I sit in the same booth where we had our confrontation last week. But this time, the atmosphere is different, softer, more honest. "I owe you an apology," she says. "A real one this time. I'm listening. I was wrong about everything. About you, about this place, about what matters. I thought success meant leaving all this behind, climbing as high as I could and never looking back. But watching you today, seeing what you've built here, this is real success. This is legacy." She pulls out her phone and shows me something that makes my heart skip. It's her resignation letter from the financial firm in New York. "I submitted this yesterday," she says. "I want to come home, Grandma. I want to learn from you. I want to be part of what you're building here." I study her face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. But all I see is a young woman who's finally understood what she lost when she chose pride over family. This isn't about the money, I say carefully. Even if you do this, even if you change your whole life, I might not change that will. I know, she says, and I believe her. I'm not doing this for the inheritance. I'm doing it because I finally understand what I threw away at that Thanksgiving table. I threw away the most important relationship in my life because I was too proud to see its value. She reaches across the table and takes my flour-dusted hands in her clean ones. I called you an old fool, but I was the fool. You've been trying to teach me about love and community and legacy my whole life, and I was too busy looking ahead to see what was right in front of me. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I see my granddaughter, not the successful financial analyst, not the disappointed family member, but the little girl who used to stand on a step stool beside me, learning to make biscuits and absorbing lessons about life. It's going to be hard work, I warn her. This isn't a game or a temporary career change. If you're going to be part of this, you're going to have to earn the respect of this community. You're going to have to prove that you understand what we're about. I want to try, she says. Will you teach me? I look around my restaurant, at the tables where 3 generations gather every week, at the kitchen where love is measured in portions and seasoned with wisdom, at the community I've spent 40 years building one meal at a time. We'll see, I say. Come back Monday morning at 5 a.m. We'll start with breakfast prep and see if you can keep up with this old fool. She laughs through her tears, and for the first time in months, it sounds like music. What would you do if someone who hurt you deeply asked for a second chance? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see if Brittany can truly change her ways. 6 months later, I'm standing in my kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, watching my granddaughter prep vegetables for the day's senior meal. Her hands move with confidence now, chopping onions with the rhythm I've been teaching her since she came back to Atlanta. The expensive manicure is long gone, replaced by hands that know the feel of honest work. Grandma, she says, not looking up from her cutting board. Mrs. Patterson's daughter called yesterday. She wants to bring her mother's great-grandchildren to next week's cooking class. That's wonderful. We'll need extra ingredients for the cornbread lesson. Already ordered them. I smile, watching her work. The transformation hasn't been easy or quick. There were days in those first weeks when I wondered if she'd stick with it, when the physical demands of restaurant work and the emotional challenge of earning community trust seemed too much for someone accustomed to air-conditioned offices and expense account lunches. But she persevered. She showed up every morning at 5 a.m., learned every recipe, served every customer with genuine care, and slowly, very slowly, began to understand what I'd been trying to teach her all her life. The real turning point came 3 months ago, during our biggest community dinner yet. We were serving nearly 200 people when the kitchen equipment started failing. The industrial oven went out just as we were supposed to be serving dessert, and I watched panic flash across Brittany's face. What do we do? She asked. We improvise, I said, and started calling neighbors. Within an hour, we had borrowed ovens from 3 nearby restaurants, enlisted volunteers from the community, and turned a potential disaster into a neighborhood celebration. I watched Brittany coordinate the chaos with the same skills she'd used in her finance job, but this time in service of something bigger than profit margins. That night, as we cleaned up after the last guest had gone home, she said something that stayed with me. I finally understand why you never wanted to retire. This isn't work, it's purpose. Now, as I watch her prepare for another day of serving our community, I see that purpose reflected in everything she does. She's not just following recipes, she's preserving culture. She's not just serving food, she's nourishing souls. The morning rush begins, and we fall into the rhythm we've developed over these months. Brittany handles the register while I work the grill. Jerome manages the kitchen staff, and our newest addition, Destiny, who started working part-time after school, helps with prep and cleanup. At 10 a.m., Elias Thompson walks through the door, carrying a familiar leather folder. He's been my lawyer for 15 years, but today he's wearing a smile I haven't seen before. Good morning, Eloisa, Brittany. He nods to both of us. I have some paperwork for you to review. We sit in the back booth, the same one where Brittany read her exclusion from my will 6 months ago. But this time, the documents tell a different story. I've revised the will again, I tell her, watching her face carefully. You're back in it. Her eyes fill with tears, but she doesn't speak immediately. Instead, she reads through the legal language that restores her inheritance, but with conditions that reflect everything she's learned. The Washington Foundation for Elder Care, she reads aloud, co-founded by Eloisa Washington and Brittany Washington Johnson. You'll be responsible for managing the foundation's operations, I explain, making sure the money goes where it's needed most, ensuring that elderly folks in our community never have to choose between dignity and survival. And the restaurant will be yours someday if you want it, but only if you continue to honor what it represents. She sets down the papers and looks around the dining room, where the lunch crowd is starting to gather. Mrs. Henderson waves from her usual table. Destiny's grandmother stops by to thank us for the cooking lessons that have given her granddaughter such confidence. A group of teenagers clusters around the community bulletin board, looking at announcements for next week's programs. I want it, Brittany says quietly. Not because of the money, but because of what it means. Because of what you've taught me about legacy and love and the difference between success and significance. I reach across the table and take her hands that are now calloused from honest work, stained with the evidence of service, strong from months of learning what it means to build something that matters. There's one more thing, I say, pulling out a small wrapped package. This belonged to your great-great-grandmother, the one who survived slavery and passed down the recipes we still use today. Inside is a simple gold ring, worn smooth by generations of Washington women who understood that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the love you leave behind. She wore this while she cooked for her family and her community, I tell Brittany as she slips it onto her finger. Your great-grandmother wore it when she taught me these recipes. I wore it when I taught your mother, and when I tried to teach you before you were ready to learn. And now you're ready. That evening, as we close up the restaurant together, Brittany asks the question I've been waiting for. Do you forgive me, Grandma, for what I said at Thanksgiving? For all the years I wasted being ashamed of where I came from? I stop wiping down the counter and look at her, really look at her. I see the little girl who used to help me set tables, the teenager who drifted away as she grew older, the young woman who broke my heart with her cruelty, and the person she's become through months of hard work and genuine change. Baby girl, I say, there's nothing to forgive. You were lost, and now you're found. You were broken, and now you're whole. That's not something that needs forgiveness. That's something that deserves celebration. We lock up together and walk to our cars under the soft glow of Auburn Avenue's streetlights. Tomorrow, we'll be back at 5 a.m., ready to serve our community and continue building the legacy that connects us to our past and guides us toward our future. As I drive home through the familiar streets of Atlanta, I think about the journey that brought us here, from the heartbreak of Thanksgiving dinner to the joy of redemption earned through service. I think about Marcus and how proud he would be to see what we've built. I think about my grandmother, whose recipes and wisdom live on in every meal we serve. Most of all, I think about the truth I've learned through all of this, that love without respect is just sentiment. But love with respect, love that's been tested and proven and earned through action, that's the foundation of everything that matters. The recipe for redemption, it turns out, is the same as the recipe for cornbread. Simple ingredients, careful attention, patient work, and enough love to make it all come together into something nourishing and beautiful. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Some bridges can only be rebuilt with time and effort and genuine change. But when the work is done with love, when the foundation is solid, when the recipe has been passed down through generations of strong women who understood what really matters, well, that's when you get something worth preserving. That's when you get a legacy. The end.